Hey guys, it's me, Bagrisham. As most of you know, for the past few months I've been mainly making PC build videos for my channel. I find no issue with this because it's a great go-to backbone video on my channel, but I feel like I need to start branching out more if I ever want to grow and expand. So starting with this video, I'll begin to start making more varied types of video to broaden my scope for my vision of this channel. Channel update, that sounds like an Apple keynote aside, let's get started with the main topic of this video. As many Kingdom Hearts fans are aware, the long-awaited third entry to the Kingdom Hearts series was finally revealed, to much excitement last summer at E3. Some early gameplay footage was shown, and now fans are eagerly awaiting more news on the upcoming game. Now knowing that the game exists, many are beginning to speculate on what the game will include in terms of world design, and I personally had a few thoughts, but they weren't fully realized until last week. Last Wednesday on IGN.com, an opinion article came out discussing 10 worlds they would like to see in Kingdom Hearts 3, and among that list were the Avengers, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and surprisingly the Muppets. As many fans could guess, the article didn't get much positive feedback, and upon reading this, it stirred my thoughts on the game and what I thought would be good additions to the series. Let me just state that these are my thoughts on the subject, and your ideas for the game are just as valid, but I'll be breaking down my thoughts into 3 categories: worlds that should return, worlds that shouldn't return, and worlds that should be added. First off, I'm going to start with worlds that I really don't want to see again. First is Port Royal. Now this world was a really weird experiment for Kingdom Hearts 2, and didn't really blend well with the atmosphere of the game. Donald and Goofy stood out as weird, bulgy characters, and it just seemed like it just wouldn't work out. It seems to me like a guarantee that it won't return, but you never know what will happen with the game. Second is Atlantica, and in my opinion this is the worst level in all the games. With the completely different controls, the weak storyline, and the terrible singing that was in the second game, I just don't want to see this world return, and many would agree with me. Up next is Agrabah. Now here's where I'm at a bit of a crossroads. I really enjoyed the level in the first game, but the second game just completely rehashed the story and didn't come out well. Now this level is still redeemable if they change up the story by either adding a new story or following the King of Thieves storyline from the third movie, but if I have to go fight Jafar for a third time, I'm just going to get bored. For my fourth choice is the Land of Dragons, and this map was really good for a one-off level, but putting it back in the story would just be really weird, and I can't see them doing anything new in terms of a storyline. Fifth is Pride Lands, and here's a map that I really just couldn't get into. Maybe it was just weird to me to see Sora fight with his mouth, but it just was odd to me. It wasn't a bad map, as I do like the Lion King and Timon and Pumbaa, but I just couldn't get into the storyline with it. Finally is Halloween Town, and let me point out this is one of my favorite maps, but the lack of story options left make me worry for this world. They already played out the Oogie Boogie and the Christmas storylines already, and they'll need to have a good new story for this map to become interesting again. I really don't want to see this world become stale, but if that happens, it's not going to turn out well. Now that I've already stated the worlds I don't want to see, unless they're really well done, let's get into the worlds that I want to see return. First is Neverland. It's a level from the very first game, and it's excellent, and I've always wondered why it wasn't even in the second game. The flight mechanics were really good for boss fights, and the level itself was contained only to one ship, so imagine having all of Neverland to explore. Flying around Neverland without pesky loading screens would make it a great map, and having the storyline from Peter Pan would only add on to the greatness of this level. Second are the towns Traverse Town and Twilight Town. These are great worlds that aren't based off a Disney story, and they're extremely interesting. Having them return will bring out the continuation of the first 2 games. Up next is Wonderland. Now this level was downright perfect in following the source material. It was weird, silly, funny, puzzling, and it followed the movie exactly. Having the world return with all the characters like Mad Hatter, Alice, Cheshire Cat, and the Queen of Hearts would just make this interesting, and it would be good for a new experience. My fourth choice is Olympus Coliseum, and what Kingdom Hearts game would it be without Olympus Coliseum? The battles are still fun, and it's possible to get an interesting storyline between Mount Olympus and Hades. James Woods and Danny DeVito offer great voices for this level, and I've always loved it. Up next is Hollow Bastion, and this is one of the most awesome levels from Kingdom Hearts 1. With the Beast as your party member, this level had more development in the plot than any other level besides the ending. In the second game, you resulted with you versus 1,000 Heartless, which was my favorite part in the second game. Maybe it was just the satisfaction of decimating the crowd, but it was still a great place to visit. There's no doubt that this castle has more to explore, as well as the town that surrounds it, so having this level won't be a bad addition. My sixth choice is Deep Space. It was an okay level in the handheld series, but I would like to have this set in Hawaii instead of space for the Lilo and Stitch plotline. Lilo and Stitch is a great movie, and it's not a bad choice for a level. If anyone ever questions Donald or Goofy, they could just be labeled as aliens, and not to mention the guns from Stitch could be used by Sora now that we've seen him use guns in the third game. My seventh choice is Timeless River. It was an odd level, but the art was fantastic. There wasn't much of a story, but it was a great level letter to Disney, and it worked really well in the second game. I do hope that a better plotline is used, but other than that, I wouldn't mind it returning. Up next is Castle Oblivion. Now I'm kind of at ends with this one. Castle Oblivion was in Chain of Memories of Birth by Sleep, and while it wasn't an actual level, the world does exist, so I'm going to keep it at that. Having Castle Oblivion and Kingdom Hearts 3 would tie together Birth by Sleep, Chain of Memories, and Kingdom Hearts 3 quite nicely, as a way to keep the story going for Ventus, along with providing an interesting non-Disney world. Up next is Enchanted Dominion, and this world was boring, and I'll go right out and say it. I do have hopes for this world though, because Maleficent needs to be as scary and controlling as she was in Kingdom Hearts 1, and not have a minor role like she did in Kingdom Hearts 2. Having her fortify this world and taking it over with the Heartless would be a good way to flesh out her character, so it's not a bad choice to have. If it does end up not being in the game, I won't be too upset. After that is the City of Bells. I'm going to call it that because I don't want to screw up the pronunciation, but for those who aren't aware, this is the Hunchback of Notre Dame world. I personally thought this world wasn't that interesting, but if they had stuck to the storyline, it would have been a lot better. I'm okay if it follows the movie, but I won't be too excited if it's like the last one. Finally, to cap off my returning worlds list is Space Paranoids. Now yes, this is like Pirates of the Caribbean for a non-animated world, but it was interestingly set in Kingdom Hearts 2, and although I hated the level in Dream Drop Distance, there is potential for having a better version, and possibly a crossover. Speaking of crossovers, it's time to finally get into my new worlds that I like to see in Kingdom Hearts 3. Starting off is Wreck-It Ralph. Now I know some of you may be groaning, but stick with me for a second. I enjoyed this film and it stands on its own 2 feet without the popular video game characters in the movie. Connecting Tron and Wreck-It Ralph would be a nice jump without causing too many issues with the plot. A heartless attack that could be considered video game viruses and interesting, and no one would question Donald and Goofy in a video game because they look like video game characters. Some funny jokes could be thrown in, and I think it would be a nice addition to the world lineup. Up next is Atlantis: The Lost Empire. This movie matches the Kingdom Hearts plotline well, and it shouldn't cause any issues with the story. I love this movie, and having these great characters in Kingdom Hearts would rush back the nostalgia I got when I played the very first game, and saw my favorite characters on the screen. This film is considerably a cult classic, and adding it to the Kingdom Hearts lineup would be a home run in my book. Speaking of home runs, up next is the greatest Disney movie ever made, Chicken Little. Just kidding. A movie that would cause major fan happiness is Treasure Planet. Now while it wasn't the best moneymaker of a movie, many Disney fans finally remember this film. It has a cool setting, it has a good plot, and it could be implemented with the Gummy Ship somehow, and I can see it going well as a story. If it's given a shot, it could turn out really awesome. As I'm sure you were aware this was coming, up next is to talk about Frozen and Tangled. Yes, I do agree that these worlds should be implemented, and due to Frozen's popularity, I would be surprised if it wasn't added already. Good music, interesting plot structure, funny characters, a good place to learn about the Blizzard spell and the Frozen world, Winter Heartless would be cool, and overall, there's no point in not adding it. Now Tangled is less likely, but who knows. I wouldn't object as long as the story doesn't become like a musical level like Atlantica was in the second game. Now for my take on Marvel and Star Wars. I'll go right out and say I really don't want these worlds in the game. They would be a bad addition, and it'd be too easy to screw up. As much as I would love to see Sora fight with the Hulk, or have a battle between Sora and Darth Vader, it really would just end up looking like Pirates of the Caribbean. It'd be weird and wouldn't fit the game type. Sticking to animation is the best way to go with this game, and Donald and Goofy are too cartoony in Star Wars and Marvel anyway. Now if we got an animated comic cel-shaded Marvel, it could work, but I would rather not take the risk. It makes more sense to not have Star Wars or Marvel in the game at all, than rather have a screwy mismatch of characters on the screen. Just because Disney owns the right to them doesn't mean that they should be put in the animated game. If they do want to implement Easter eggs like a Captain America shield for Goofy, a Death Star themed Gummy Ship fight, or even to go as far as have a hidden boss battle with Darth Vader, I wouldn't have any major issues with it, but just don't add them to the story. It'd be confusing to add these worlds to the Kingdom Hearts universe, and in the end, it would just make a lot of people upset. Finally is my stance on Pixar, and personally I say go for it, but only for a select number of worlds. Movies like Bug's Life, Brave, WALL-E, and Cars are just a downright no. And how angry as a Kingdom Hearts fan would you be if you had Sora, Donald, and Goofy turn into cars? With Toy Story and Monsters Inc., I really don't have any issues, as I would love to see Sora call himself an action figure or have Sully and Mike freak out with Sora the Human. These films would work well in the universe line, and they could turn out great. I do have one maybe film, which is The Incredibles. If it is made correctly, it could work, but I would be cautious if it's ever announced. Other than that, all I have left is an honorable mention, which is Black Cauldron. Now there's pretty much no chance of it being in the game, but who knows. They added Chicken Little from Kingdom Hearts 2, so if that can happen, maybe there's hope. But when it all comes down to this, all we can really do is guess and speculate. We really just have to wait to see until more details are announced for the game. Well, these are my thoughts on the worlds of Kingdom Hearts 3. They aren't perfect, and this video is not really well made. And you may not agree with them, but they're just my opinions. What worlds would you like to see added? And if there's any that I missed, which ones do you think sound cool? Post a comment in the comment section below, and as usual, here comes the begging. Please like this video if you liked it. Be sure to dislike this video if you hate me. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see some more videos, and you can do so by clicking the link that I have right here. Other than that, I hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye.